Welcome to What to Do When, a podcast from real lawyers with real perspective, where we explore a variety of legal issues and scenarios. Each week, we focus on a new topic and discuss what to do when and if any of these legal scenarios ever happen to you or a loved one. With over 40 years of combined legal experience, our hosts offer their unique perspectives and insights on a range of real-life legal situations.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of What to Do When. We're here in Richmond, Virginia. I'm Jackie Critzer.
I'm Scott Cardani. And Jackie, what's on the docket for today?
Today is what to do when you've been impacted by a TDO.
Ooh, what's a TDO, Jackie?
A Temporary Detention Order.
Oh, that's really a big topic because a lot of people don't even understand what that is. And maybe something happened to them when they're a kid or an adult. But what we're talking about in broad terms is two different categories. One category is when you voluntarily went into some kind of inpatient treatment long term. You've been by the court or you went to a mental health institute to get help for a week.
Well, I think even short term, right? You can do
even
3 days, 5 days, 7 days. I think even 1 day. Well, when you voluntarily go, what sort of situation do you find that people say, I'm not dealing well with this situation. I got to go. I need help.
Well, it can be a lot of things. It can be, for instance, a family crisis where maybe a parent died and you're a kid and you just weren't handling it well and they decided you needed to stay because you freaked out, maybe got angry and were tearing things up. That could be it. Or
so maybe unusual violence.
Yep. Unusual violence or self-harm.
Any kind of self-harm.
A lot of people go to mental institutes when they're having issues with drug use or alcohol use and they can't control it and they just their behavior starts to just deteriorate to a point where parents or somebody else in their life says, hey, you're out of control. You're doing crazy stuff. You need help.
Do you think it's more common that people say they recognize their own maybe temporary or maybe more permanent need for assistance, or do you think it's more common that they don't really see it themselves and it's a family member that sees it and a family member that sort of has to either call the police to get them to take them to what is commonly referred to as a psychiatric hospital or psych ward, mental health facility, or they try to convince them to go on their own?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say it's probably pretty close to even in that. I think people do recognize their behavior's falling apart and they're looking for help sometimes. And sometimes they know how to get it. Sometimes they don't. And like you said, but I do think families fall into that a lot, especially young people. That would be the parents going like, hey, this is way beyond normal behavior for you. And I'm really concerned about you. You need to get some grounded help. And, those things are very, very wonderful and helpful. The other category is when a court or somebody else says, you're going here, you're going to do these things because of your behavior. You're going to go inpatient mental health treatment. You're going to go inpatient drug treatment. Any of those kind of things where it's ordered by the court, which could be a plethora of things. And the court basically, or some kind of judicial body is saying you have to do this and you're complying with that judicial body's order, then that's kind of the same period. The difference is you went willingly one way and the other way you didn't go so willingly.
All right. So let's walk through a scenario where we're going to do an under 18 versus an over 18 if there's a difference. So we've got this young person under 18. They've experienced some sort of trauma. They're engaging in serious, significant self-harm. They are acting in a very, very bizarre way, just unusual. Maybe hearing voices. Maybe they say they're hearing voices. Maybe they say they're seeing things that the rest of the people in the room can't see. And the parent, the family member, the teacher, the counselor at school, whomever has said, we've got a mental health crisis. We need to get this person seen by a psychologist or psychiatrist. Now we go to here in Richmond, it'd be what, like Poplar Springs or Tucker's?
Yeah, or Tucker's or something like that. And sometimes you have to call the police to get them to go. And the police have that ability to help you get them there. And that's where the TDO comes in. But if you're talking voluntary, we're in the voluntary underage, then it's parents going like, son, we're going to take you to Tucker's and we're going to admit you for a few days. And we feel like you need really some serious help.
So what's the first thing that happens when whether you arrive by a cop car or you arrive with your parents, you arrive at the door of these facilities. Do you know what's the next step? You're evaluated, I presume.
Yeah, you're basically you go in, you register in. It is a different process. If you're involuntarily, like somebody is ordering you to go, then there's a 72-hour hold where the facility will have a chance to evaluate you, and that usually goes before some kind of lower level judiciary hearing, usually done by some kind of commissioner, and they determine if you need a longer stay or don't need a longer stay. But if you go voluntarily, they kind of determine that, and obviously if it's voluntary, you kind of have a chance to leave.
And it's not necessarily 72 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be less than that.
Could be less, could be more.
So if you go and the police have taken you because you're a young person or you didn't really want to go, that 72-hour hold, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's usually for someone who is found to be a danger to themselves and or others. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. You're talking that's gotten so bad that and it's normally, most of the time, it's danger to themselves more so than others. But so that's where you're at, yeah. And so again, and after that 72-hour hold, they have a committee hearing, and usually that person's appointed counsel, and then they determine. It's usually kind of a guardian ad litem. I used to do those 20 years ago, those hearings, and then they make a determination based on the report of the hospital and everything that's going on, whether they need to stay and continue in treatment and be ordered into treatment or not. Obviously, if you come in on your own or your parents' own, and after they do an evaluation, they say, hey, we're going to change your medication, you can go home, or we think you need a long-term stay, then that's a whole thing between the parents and everybody, and that can just be worked out between the parties. I mean, I guess you could get up and leave if you're the 17-year-old and say, I'm not staying.
Well, during that 72-hour hold, which is the non-voluntary, typically, what sort of contact should the family expect to be able to have, or what should maybe the person who's being held, what sort of contact should they expect to have with parents or outside the facility?
I wish I knew currently. I don't really know. It's not a lot.
Minimal.
Really,
probably not in person, maybe phone contact in the first 72 hours is.
Yeah, I think that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with pretty minimal because they're trying to evaluate them, and they have to get them into their routine. And, sometimes they need sedated and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, you're just talking about a whole, I've had parents be there the whole time and just wait and get what little information they have. And I've had parents who just, kind of left and said, let me know.
And so what happens next? Does the family need an attorney? What are they supposed to do in this process? These families are sort of flying blind, I think, when it comes to committing their children, even if it's for a day or 3 or 10 or 30.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with committing in these kind of things is the after effect of them. So here's what I'm talking about. Say Jackie's 14 years old and she goes off the deep end. She lost her boyfriend and decides this is the end of life. And I'm not trying to make light of that because these things really do happen. People get so...
It's a spiral, right?
It's a spiral. And all of a sudden, her life just, for her, in her mind, feels like she's just, everything's nothing to live for. And she starts cutting on herself and doing this stuff. And, she gets TDO'd. Say she's there for 72 hours. She goes on with life. Mm-hmm. Never has another issue, never has another mental health break, nothing. That was just a bad time.
It was just a blip on the radar. I'm recovered.
Hormonal blip. Probably.
I'm good. Yeah, right. And I'm okay.
Growing up. And so Jackie's 29 years old and a lawyer now and living a great life. And she decides, hey, I'm going to go purchase a handgun for myself. And I just feel like I want to start shooting, or she wants to go hunting, whatever it is. And she goes into that gun store or wherever, and there's this big form you have to fill out. Mm-hmm. And you go down and you start checking off the boxes, and, she was 14 at the time. I forget that the way the questions are worded on there can be really tricky. And what they're looking for is you to say yes to that you've been committed at some point in your life, or you've been voluntarily in a mental institute. And most people think, that doesn't apply to me, or they don't even remember it.
Or I was 14. Why would it? Surely this only means over 18, right?
Then all of a sudden, the state police show up at the place you're at, and they're arresting you on both a felony and probably a misdemeanor both, because they kind of just dual do that. And
that is based on the wrong misinformation on the gun purchase application, right?
In case you swore under oath that this was true, and I have represented so many people. in this arena who have gotten this charge because they forgot about something, or they've had partial rights restored but not their gun right restored, or something like that. But so this is very important because we don't understand this as a society, especially when it's voluntary. I think it's a little different when it's involuntary. But so, you don't answer the question right, and then you've lied under oath, and then on top of that, you've probably picked up the gun, which is possession, as soon as you touch the gun. So say Jackie goes into the store and picks up the gun, and she's looking at, I like this gun, I love the color, and she puts it back down. She just possessed a firearm in front of the clerk, who's going to be the witness.
Right.
So it really is. It's
not just the hospitalization event. It is long term, and I mean, you'll see questions probably for the rest of your life about whether you've ever been hospitalized for mental health issues. We see it a lot in custody cases. We see it in divorce cases. We see it in a lot of different aspects. And then people start combing through your medical records, and you were in the hospital, but you didn't report it to this physician, and why aren't you reporting it, and what was the issue? And so, and I'm not saying you shouldn't go when you need to go. Just be aware that there's no shame in going, but it is important to be honest about hospitalizations as you move forward beyond the hospitalization. Scott, I think it's important to draw a distinction between the 17 and under versus the 18 and over. So I'm a mom of a kid who's 19 or 20, let's say, and this kid has had to go in on a temporary detention hold, and similar situation. It's a blip on the radar, but they need more help than can be provided outside the institution. What can I expect to be informed about from the facility of my over 18-year-old child?
Very little.
Yeah.
It's a whole different ball game because they're an adult, and then you get in the HIPAA records and all this kind of stuff. And if you don't have that prepared right, where they have a release of information and all those kind of things, you could be in the dark about your whole kid's treatment, not know. They could release him in 72 hours, and you have no idea if he's okay, not okay. It becomes a very dark place for you as the parent trying to help your kid. And, say your kid's honest to a fault. That's great, but most people...
But maybe they're mad because you put them in the in the facility, and now you're getting zero information. You don't know what medications they've been put on. You don't know if they've received some kind of diagnosis that needs to be
watched or screened, or
right.
Or they could come out and say nothing happened to me, and you put me in there for no reason, and they had this whole litany of things that they needed treatment for, all those things. But well,
in another podcast, you can look for us talking about wills, trusts, and estates, powers of attorney, and how that can help in situations like this, especially when your young person's going off to college and they're away from you, and you don't know what's going on. Then you get the phone call. You still can't do anything. They're over 18. But watch for the podcast that's going to come out in the next few weeks about powers of attorney that can help with your young person once they are getting ready to embark upon a college or some other journey that goes beyond your house.
And let me say one other thing about this whole thing with the gun things. I don't want to harp on that. We've done a thing on gun rights, and you can look that up. But one thing you need to, if you have children, family member, adults who've went through any kind of this where they've been either forced into some kind of treatment or voluntarily did a treatment, your rights to own and purchase a gun are compromised tremendously. And a lot of times they don't remember as kids. So as parents, it's good to say, hey, honey, just remember now you're an adult. If you ever go buy a gun, just reminding people of that, because if they answer that question wrong, they're going to be looking at a felony. You're going to come in there. We can obviously help you get your rights restored if that's happened to you. I do that all the time, and it's a pretty straightforward process. But we've done that. We've done a podcast on rights restoration before too. You can watch that. But my point is, there's two different levels. Sometimes you need a governor to pardon or give you back your rights first, and then you get your gun rights. And so there's a lot of things to know, but you need to talk about it. And as family members who have people who've had mental health or drug issues or long-standing issues, you need to remind them that those are hindrances to firearms and purchase and possession, and you need to make sure that they know that, because you don't want them to get in trouble and be facing a felony when they, some people go through life, they're 40 years old and they forgot that when they're 12 that something happened to them, and because it just isn't on the radar anymore. They're like, I'm healthy, I'm good, I never had a problem. So those are the ones that usually get you.
Well, speaking of the never had a problem or did have a problem and worked on it, once your family member, you or your family member or your close friend, whatever it is released from this psychiatric or mental health hospital or facility, it is really important to follow the instructions, follow the recommendations. Every single time there is a recommendation to follow up with your primary care, follow up with the therapist, follow up with the psychiatrist if there's medication involved. It is critical that you, for future questions, it is critical that you take the steps and do your follow-up care once you're released. That's going to help you in every area, with jobs, with school applications, with, in every way, it's going to make a difference for you if you do your follow-up care after you or your family member's been held.
And again, if you feel like maybe you were wrongly diagnosed, then go get a second opinion and walk through that. You don't necessarily have to say, I don't know if that's right. And go find out, make sure. But like Jackie said, these are all important that you, so to speak, we call it handling your business. You really need to handle your business because it does have long-term effects. And that's what really we're talking about today is there are long-term effects that nobody thinks about when these things are going on. And we've got to be mindful and cognizant because they can come back to bite you in a way that you were totally unexpected and really harmful to your life and your future. And we don't want that for people.
Be on the lookout for our next episodes. We look forward to seeing you. Like and subscribe.
Have a good day. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of What to Do When. For more episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, and we encourage you to check our archives to listen to previous topics. Tune in next week for a new episode and some fresh perspective from Critzer Cardani.